you doing there?
I'm at a meeting of legislators because legislators have an important role to play in relation to climate change. As you say, I want to see Britain put into law a commitment to zero emissions. That's where I hope the global agreement is going to go, and I want us to reflect that in British law as well. And actually, we passed the Climate Change Act in 2008 with all-party support. And you know what's really interesting is that has now been reproduced in many countries around the world. So everybody's got to do their bit. Cities, legislators, regions, and of course national governments as well.
There are some eyebrows raising at your new interest again in climate change. I mean, as Labour leader, you wanted to freeze household bills. That would have only made it harder to decarbonise energy. I mean, your position now is a bit bankrupt, isn't it?
That's not really the way I see it, no. Look, on the issue of energy bills, I think it's very important that people don't see the low-carbon transition as somehow an excuse for companies to fleece them. And that's why we propose a temporary freeze on energy bills. But, you know, frankly, Krishnan, the world really is depending on these Paris talks. This is an incredibly important moment, and it is something I care passionately about. It's something I talked about as leader of the Labour Party. Of course, I played a role as climate change secretary at the not-so-successful Copenhagen talks in 2009. But you know, this deal has got to set us on the road to 2 degrees, stopping a warming of more than 2 degrees, to a long-term goal of zero emissions, and climate finance from the developed world to the developing world. I must say, coming here for these talks and being at the venue last night, it did slightly bring back memories of Copenhagen, but I hope it will be more successful.
OK, well, look, I mean, this is the first time we've had a chance to talk to you since the general election, in fact, and we've missed your analysis from the interview scene.
That's nice of you to say.
Well, have you now worked out why you lost?
I think that this is a complex election. I think there are obviously some proximate causes, like, for example, the issue of the Scottish nationalists, which played both in Scotland and indeed in England. There were clearly issues about economic credibility that we faced. And look, I have to take my own responsibility because people were voting for Prime Minister and more people voted for David Cameron than for me. It's a complicated election, a different set of factors, but there are 3 of them anyway.
So when you look at Jeremy Corbyn, do you wish you had been more bold, more anti-austerity than you were?
I think that's too simplistic. When I look at Jeremy Corbyn, I see somebody who has got an overwhelming mandate from the Labour Party for, I think, 3 things that he's pursuing. Anti-austerity, a different approach to politics, less of a top-down politics, as he says, and a particular approach to foreign policy. And so, in a sense, he's pursuing his mandate. Each leader has to do it their own way. And I did make a vow when I stood down as Labour leader, which is I'm not going to give advice to my successors about how they should be doing it.
And I'm not asking you that. I'm asking
you
about
your own reflections. One of the most important things is that you do it your own way.
No, and I'm not asking you to comment on Jeremy Corbyn. I'm asking you what you feel about your own failings as leader and whether you should have been more like him. You know, more radical, more left-wing, the direction he's taken the party that you started. You moved the Labour Party left. He's taken it further left.
Not really. You know, look, I pursued the election campaign that I believed was right. And, you know, I think there's a lesson in life and indeed in politics, Krishnan, which is that you don't look back and do sort of, you know, recasting what you should have done, because I don't think actually that's particularly helpful. And, you know, what I care about is how I can pursue the things that I cared about as leader in different ways, like climate change, like tackling inequality. So I'm somebody who has thought about the why we lost, as I've said, but is also thinking about the future and my contribution to the party.
We most recently saw you talking about Syria, and the party is deeply split over this and many other things. When you look at that division running through Labour now, do you take any responsibility for it?
Well, let's just talk about the Syria divisions that there were. You know, Alan Johnson made a very good speech, actually, in the House of Commons. I didn't agree with his conclusion, but one of the things he said was, look, on these kind of votes, people just vote their consciences, whether there's a whip or not. Tony Blair had 139 people who voted against him on the Iraq war. Now, I think Jeremy Corbyn had sort of more people, if you like, voting with him on this issue, but you know, this was a finely balanced decision.
Yeah, but
and
this
it was
is your legacy,
absolutely
isn't it?
right that people could vote their consciences, because I actually think that's what the public would expect us to do, to vote for the things that MPs should each examine what they thought was the right case and vote accordingly.
But isn't Labour today your legacy? I mean, everything that's happened, even the election of Jeremy Corbyn, the £3 membership, the change in the rules, that's all, everything you did. We're here because of you.
Well, look, first of all, I think it's good that there are more people in the Labour Party. You know, I've got to say to you, Krishna, the notion that we should be saying more people joining our party, we've something like doubled our membership since the general election, that is a good thing, not a bad thing. Now, if you want my view about whether new membership should be about talking about deselections and all that, no, it should not. It shouldn't be about deselections. It should be about how can we do what I didn't fully achieve, which is be a genuine community organisation.
So you don't like momentum?
Actually reaching out to people and being more of a fighting force. I don't know the details of what momentum is about. What I don't think we should be doing, and I made this point in relation to the vote on Syria, but I make this broader point. I'm not interested in going back to the 1980s when people were being talked about being deselected. I don't think that's the answer for our party. I don't believe Jeremy Corbyn thinks that's the answer to our party as well. In fact, he said he's not interested in deselections, and he is totally condemns, as has Tom Watson, some of the vile abuse that some of our MPs have been getting. You know, I think we've got to concentrate our fire on the Tories, and we've also got to do something else, which I didn't fully do, which is, you know, I'm an old-fashioned guy who thinks that ideas are what change politics, and ideas are what win elections. Now, there are big questions for our party. How do we tackle inequality and build a bigger coalition to do so? How do we properly reform Europe in a progressive direction? How do we grow the economy as well as redistribute, using issues like climate change in order to do
Ed
so?
Miliband, I'd love to talk about all of those things another time. I do hope you'll join us again. Don't be a stranger. It's been too long, and we'll see you soon.
Look forward
Thank you very
to it.
much.